I've seen a lot of magic books and a lot of magic publishers in my time, but I've recently been shocked by a book I received. Spoiler alert, it's one of the most beautiful magic books I've ever seen. And the weird part is, it was put out by an amateur. An amateur wrote the material, an amateur took all of the stunning photographs. He put everything together into a tremendous package. Now, of course, he had some help, but so much of the work was done by him, and I'm very impressed. You and I have seen this person's work before, but this is such a huge step change for the world of amateur magic book publishing. I should clarify, this isn't just any amateur. This is Ryan Schlutz. Ryan is a Florida native who has turned into a creative force in the last few years. He is a part-time professional, and he's released a number of items to the magic world. You might know him for the False Anchor series, which I've reviewed before. The book we're looking at today is not part of this series. In fact, it's the best of everything he released prior to the False Anchor series. I'm talking about Unanchored. As previously alluded, this is an almost 300-page hardback book with over 250 pictures and approximately 30 routines. There's a standard edition, beautiful, and a deluxe collector's edition. So what's the difference between the standard and deluxe edition? Well, if you get the deluxe edition, it's basically the same book, except now it has a painted blue edge to it, a signed and numbered bookplate, a deck of unanchored playing cards, and a gilded edge deck of unanchored playing cards. And it all comes tastefully packaged in a magnetic box that holds all of the collector's edition stuff in it. Gang, this rivals some of the most beautiful and professionally done books I've ever seen. But that's all about the aesthetic. What about the material? This is almost exclusively close-up card material, although there are a few exceptions. There's a Simon Aronson shuffleboard inspired routine that uses nothing more than debit and credit cards, business cards, whatever you can borrow from your participants' wallets. There's also a stand-up prediction routine of you with a celebrity in a famous city, but otherwise, the rest of the material is almost all cards. The tricks are broken down into 3 groups with close-up, group, and parlor, although these latter 2 sections are far smaller than the close-up section, which is why I say that this is primarily close-up card material. This is all material that's been developed and published prior to the False Anchor series, so some of this was done through Penguin, and some of it has been taught via video from other publishers. However, I'm always a fan of seeing material put into a book or written format, and I know you are too. Even though it is primarily all card material, there is a good deal of variety. As I already mentioned, you have some different shuffleboard presentations, there are card locations, and some of these were really devious. There's poker-style routines, there are gambling routines that use blackjack and poker and bridge in a surprising twist, sandwich effects, predictions. There's plenty of things to like. And to be fair, there are also a few things that I didn't like, so let's go over those first so that I can end on a high note. So a few of the minor things that I didn't like, to be fair to other books that I've reviewed on this channel, as well as you, my viewers. The first thing is that the writing style is absolutely clear, not really a negative, but somehow in reading through it, it's hard to put my finger on it. There's something missing compared to, say, a book by Stephen Minch or Richard Kaufman, which I recognize is a totally unfair comparison because Ryan has not been writing nearly as long as those guys, and they've been doing it exclusively and professionally for decades. So don't get me wrong, all of the descriptions are perfectly fine. You will learn everything in great deal and have no trouble. But perhaps it's something just a little bit more familiar in the writing and less formal, which could be to your liking. I'm not saying I didn't like it, it just felt different than most of the magic books I've read. And this is an admittedly very minor gripe. There wasn't any kind of a bibliography. Ryan does a good job of what were his inspirations, where was the starting point for this trick, what kind of moves, and teaches some of them with permission from the original creators. But I would have loved to have seen a section at the end of each trick, or potentially at the end of the book, with further reading and where some of these ideas were sourced, all in one cohesive list. Of course, that isn't expected or required. That is totally just me being pedantic. And that's really just about it for the dislikes, because there's a lot to like about this book. The first thing to like is the skill level. There's not a ton of skill required. Most of these tricks are very accessible because Ryan has built up a reputation for himself creating tricks that use subtleties over sleights and are just easy to do magic. For example, a lot of his tricks use pencil dots, edge marks, key cards. There's nothing knuckle busting in this book. Probably the hardest thing to do is the pivotal peak, and it's not really that hard to do, but it might be one of the hardest things taught in the book. I also like the fact that for some of the parlor routines, he has QR codes you can hit to watch videos of him performing this material if you want to get an idea of how it might look. He didn't do that for everything. It's really only the parlor section of the book, but I still thought that it was a nice touch. And did I mention that this book is gorgeous? Really, it might be one of the prettiest books I've ever seen, and you'll enjoy just flipping through the book to ogle the 250 plus pictures. It's even more impressive to me that Ryan took all of the photos, so not only is he extremely talented in coming up with tricks, he is also quite a gifted photographer. By the way, I really liked the format of the book where the pictures served as the backdrop for some of the text, and they weren't their own separate call-outs taking up space on the pages in a lot of instances. I'm super impressed that this entire book was put together by an amateur with very little help in terms of he doesn't have a whole production company like most magic book publishers. He did have a co-author, Salomon Weinstein, who you might recognize as one of our own erudite magicians. He helped co-author the book and even contributed one of his own tricks based on a previously released Ryan Schlutz trick. Back when I reviewed the original False Anchors, I paired it with a discussion about value in magic books. And while I cringe when I look back at that video, we've come a long way, baby. I actually believe this book, Unanchored, cements my case because I think there's a lot of good value here. When you look at this book versus the False Anchors book, they're both $75. They're both stunningly gorgeous with full color pages, gorgeous photography, great layout, etc. However, Unanchored is an almost 300-page book, while False Anchors is less than half that. Now, I recognize that page count isn't everything, so this is a little bit of apples and oranges, but I would still say that for the standard edition of this book at $75, I think it represents a pretty good value. As I talked about in that previous video, magic publishing has gotten more expensive, and we all know with inflation and other things like that, the cost of things have just kept on going up. But really, for the 30 routines that you're getting here, with the full color layout, the beautiful hardbound production values, I'm just shocked that an amateur could do this and offer it for a price that gives him a profit and provides value to us as the magical consumer. If you like close-up card magic, I think you're definitely going to find value and find tricks that you're going to want to do. And if you're just a magic book collector, well, there's a lot to love in this book as well, because if you like pretty books sitting on your shelf that you can take off from time to time, flip through, and just enjoy the experience, this book has it for you. Now, if you have this book, be sure to check out the QR code on the last page. It's a little hidden gem that Ryan put there, and I think it's one of the best hidden tricks I've ever seen in a magic book. And while Ryan's presentations are great with the way he gives it to you in the book, you don't have to accept them at face value, and in fact, I didn't. So check out this video to see how I transformed one of his presentations into something that I could call mine. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.